Doc, what is your impression of Pope Francis' apostolic letter on consecrated life?
I'm always impressed with Pope Francis's writings. They're simple, they're right to the point, and they always have a challenge that calls us to greater integrity. In reading his apostolic letter to consecrated men and women, I was impressed with the fact that, very simply, he's captured again what our documents in the church have called us to, is to revitalize ourselves, to get back to celebrating our roots, what charism brought us into existence to begin with, and for us it'd be Francis and Clare in the early friars in falling in love with the poor, the awful, and crucified one. But also to the challenge is to, do we really see ourselves as religious, especially as Franciscans, as a gift to the church? That the Spirit brought us into existence at a particular time to rebuild the church. We are still a gift to the church and revitalizing the church today. And this encyclical just reinforces that within my, in my mind. Besides that, it also reminds me that at any moment in time, especially from our perspective as Francis, it's always a grace moment to continue to root ourselves in our Franciscan charism and to make that visible by our very lives. So I was very much enlivened by the document itself and the challenges that it places before us today to live greater integrity, the charism of Francis and Clare.
You have been asked to share your thoughts on embracing the future with hope, which is Pope Francis's third challenge to all religious men and women. What is the Pope exhorting us to, not only as religious, but in particular as friars minor?
One of the things that Pope Francis makes clear in this apostolic letter is that hope opens us up to the movement of the Spirit. And especially for us as friars minor, Francis made very clear that the real general minister of the order is the Spirit. And so for us, it's very, very important to really ask ourselves, how in tune are we with where the Spirit is leading us today? If anything is true about the Spirit's always there to help us to dream new dreams. That was true in Francis's time, to dream that the Gospels can be lived, they can revitalize our lives. That is a dream that still is very much a part of who we are today. The Spirit leads us today to look at how are we called to rebuild the church, to revitalize the church, the body of Christ itself in many ways. I think of one of the statements that Jim Edmonston made one time. He said, it's not enough for us to think outside of the box. It's much more important for us to live outside of the box. And that's where the Spirit often will lead us, to really live outside that box, to really become a visible sign of the gospel, to really become a visible sign of the poor, the humble, crucified Christ in a world that really is looking for meaning, purpose, and healing and direction.
You're right in saying that we have to begin afresh each day. Are there obstacles to being men of hope? Pope Francis names a few obstacles, such as decreasing numbers of members, aging membership, globalization. From your perspective, what keeps us from being men of hope?
One of the things that, in looking at that question, I go back to when I was provincial minister and the sexual abuse scandal happened. And I remember a lot of friars, a number of friars being very much demoralized by all of that. And there's still remnants of that pretty much present not only within the province itself, but also within the American church itself. And one of the things that we as friars need to bring to that whole situation is not to let it demoralize us, but what is it calling us to? And again, it's that whole thing of moving us towards a future of hope. It's calling us to live a life of greater integrity, to really show what the gift of sexuality is and how that gift calls us into relationship with each other. It's always calling us to something more, not to something less in regards to that. So I do think there is a certain amount of spirit of being demoralized by some in the province. I think the other obstacle that we have that impedes us from really allowing the move of the Spirit to be operative in our life is a certain amount of narcissism. We get locked in on ourselves. What it is that I want, and what is it that I want to see happen. We don't use the word we very often in regards to it. I remember not too long ago talking to a friar who was looking at one of our ministries, and the basic question was, what's in it for me? Not asking the question, what is it that I can give to this particular ministry itself? I don't care how old we are. I know the older we get and the more we feel physical diminishment, we get a little bit more focused in on our aches and our pains. But what the movement of the Spirit calls us to transcend that in light of the Paschal mystery. That how do we allow that diminishment to call us to re-image ourselves and still proclaim the Gospels, still be the Gospels, not only within fraternity but also outside fraternity. So I think narcissism, to a great degree, has been a big stumbling block that's become more and more a part of our life, and again, it's much a part of our culture itself. The other thing that I also think is a stumbling block is that we fail to keep ourselves animated. Oftentimes we talk about what would give us life and what we need to be doing, but we slowly get seduced back into our old behaviors and the way we're used to doing things, and we forget about how do we keep ourselves animated and moving forward to where the Spirit is actually leading us.
You're right in saying you must be people of passion. But if we are to be men who embrace the future with hope, how is the Spirit calling us to embrace this future?
I believe the Spirit is calling us in a variety of ways to face the future. Certainly, as already been mentioned, to be men of passion. Francis was very clear when he heard the gospel on the feast of St. Matthias that, hearing that gospel to go forth, take nothing on the journey, and preach the good news. He basically said, this is what I seek, this is what I want, this is what I desire with my whole heart. How important that is, to be able to say that in our own life. What is it that really gives us passion in living out the Gospels right now within our community, within our ministries? Can we honestly say that we have that passion? This is really what I desire. This is what I really seek. This is what I really want to be, that visible sign of Christ in the world, and be a living word of good news. The other thing that comes through the document, or the letter that Pope Francis has, is that we are called to be men and women who are prophetic. If anything is true about religious life in its history, from its very beginnings, it's always been meant to be prophetic, to be on the fringe, always calling the church to something more, to greater growth. And I believe that that's still true today, that how are we being called to be prophetic today, and not to get into a lifestyle of complacency and mediocrity. And I do believe, and I see that happening sometimes in my own life, where I'm not always being prophetic and calling myself to something more besides calling the church to something more in regards to that. I also believe that a future full of hope and where the Spirit's leading us is really to attract men and women to the Franciscan lifestyle. And that can only happen if we really are full of joy in the calling that God has given us. And that we're living that out truly as brothers with each other. And we really appreciate our individuality, the uniqueness, the giftedness, the limitations that each one of us brings, and how we can build and help each other to really grow and to evangelize each other so that we can go forth and evangelize in many ways. Remember what Father John Joe Lakers one time said, if you see crazy across the street, I paraphrase that, if you see a friar who has no joy in their life, definitely cross the street. If anything, this should be a part of our life that I think the Spirit is calling us to, is that we are people that are full of joy. We see goodness, we see beauty all around us, and we try to build on that. We walk into a bad situation, we don't only see what's wrong, but we see what's right. We see the seeds of hope in that, and we're able to try to bring that forth, build upon that, and make a difference in a person's life in regards to that. I think the other thing is that will also attract men and women to our way of life in that regards. I think we're called to really become the living word. If anything is true, we have committed ourselves to live the Gospels. And are we really doing that? When people encounter us, are they encountering the Gospels? Are we really trying to enflesh them? Do they become really a part of our DNA? Because one of the things I've encountered over the years, especially here at Quincy University, with the retreat movement, with the students on campus, is there's a real thirst for spirituality. There's a real thirst for growing in a relationship with God, and to be a catalyst for that, to be able to help people to see that you can develop that relationship and deepen that relationship. I think the other thing that is very, very important as a part of our way of life is the whole aspect that our life is one of ongoing conversion. We always see that there's always something more that we're called to be transformed to. There's something more that we're called to be as men who walk in the footprints of the poor, the humble, and crucified one. And so our life is one where we really do cherish the fact that, hey, today's a new day. I can begin afresh, start all over again, see the goodness, the beauty, build upon that, reflect that, instill that joy, that passion that's within my heart, within my brothers and those around me. And I don't mean that in a Pollyannic way. I mean that it really flows from the commitment, the public commitment that I have made, that you have made to really live those Gospels and to fall in love with the poor, the humble, crucified one who leads us to the Father who is the source of all that we are, and that our lives should always give him honor, glory, and praise.